The crystal paperweight caught the afternoon sunlight, sending tiny rainbows dancing across my small shop's walls. It was just one of many trinkets in my curated collection at Harrison Antiques and Curiosities, though its true value would have shocked most people, especially my brother James. I carefully placed it back in its velvet-lined display case, my mind drifting to tomorrow's Thanksgiving dinner. Another year, another opportunity for James to remind everyone how he'd made it, while his little sister played shopkeeper. "Miss Harrison?" My assistant Kate's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "The paperwork from Sterling Properties just arrived. They need your signature on the acquisition." I smiled, thinking of the massive office building downtown that would soon join my real estate portfolio. The same building that housed my brother's prestigious law firm, Harrison and Associates. Not that he knew I was the buyer. In fact, James had no idea that his unsuccessful sister was one of the city's largest commercial property owners, operating through a web of carefully structured companies under the name Victoria Holdings. "Perfect timing," I said, taking the folder from Kate. "And the notice?" "Ready to be delivered first thing tomorrow morning," she confirmed, a knowing glint in her eye. "Your brother's firm will have 30 days to either accept the new terms or vacate." I signed the papers with a flourish, thinking about how different things were 15 years ago. Back then, James had just made partner while I was using my inheritance from Grandma to open this shop. "A waste of good money," he'd called it. "Selling trinkets while I handle million-dollar legal cases." What James never knew was that Grandma had taught me more than just how to spot valuable antiques. She'd shown me how to invest wisely, how to build wealth quietly, and most importantly, how to be patient. "Will you really go through with it?" Kate asked, watching me seal the envelope. I touched the antique locket around my neck, Grandma's last gift to me. Inside was a note that read, "True power isn't in what people see, it's in what they don't." "Tomorrow at Thanksgiving dinner," I said, "James will do what he always does. He'll mock my shop, belittle my choices, and remind everyone how successful he is. And the next morning he'll learn that his little sister with the trinket shop owns his building." My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "James just called. He's bringing his new Ferrari to dinner. Please dress appropriately this year." I looked down at my simple black dress, deliberately chosen to maintain my image as the modest shopkeeper. Tomorrow I'd wear something similar, letting them all believe what they wanted to believe. For now. Kate handed me one final document. The new lease terms for Harrison and Associates. The rent would triple, bringing it in line with market rates. "Your brother's firm can't afford this," she noted. "No," I agreed. "They can't. 15 years of taking cases based on prestige rather than profit, of spending money on appearances rather than investments. James built an image of success while I built actual success." The shop's bell chimed as a customer entered. "Just another worthless trinket shop," I heard them mutter, echoing words James had used countless times. If they only knew that this worthless shop was just a front for an empire worth hundreds of millions. That every trinket I sold was carefully selected not just for its value, but for the connections it brought, connections that had helped me build my real estate portfolio piece by piece. I closed the folder containing the building's acquisition papers and placed it in my safe. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow James would learn that while he was busy looking successful, his little sister had become the one thing he never expected. His landlord. The crystal paperweight caught the light again, sending one last rainbow across the room. Sometimes the most valuable things are the ones people dismiss as worthless. Tomorrow my brother would learn that lesson the hard way. "Kate," I called out as she prepared to leave for the day. "Make sure the eviction notice is delivered at exactly 9 a.m. tomorrow. I want it to arrive just after James finishes bragging about his latest court victory at breakfast." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Happy Thanksgiving, Miss Harrison." "Oh, it will be," I replied, touching Grandma's locket once more. "It will be indeed." Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' colonial mansion was exactly what I expected. James's new Ferrari sat prominently in the circular driveway, positioned so everyone would see it through the dining room windows. My modest Volvo, deliberately chosen despite my wealth, was relegated to the side of the house, to maintain the aesthetic, as my mother put it. "Victoria, darling." My mother's voice carried across the marble foyer, tight with familiar disappointment. "We were just discussing James's latest victory. $20 million settlement." I entered the formal dining room, taking in the familiar scene. James holding court at the head of the table, his wife Margaret draped in designer labels, my parents beaming with pride at their successful son. The room itself spoke of old money and inherited privilege, neither of which my family actually had anymore, though only I knew that. "Little sister," James called out, his voice carrying that particular tone of condescension I'd grown so accustomed to. "Still keeping that shop of yours afloat? Must be hard in this economy." If he only knew that while his law firm struggled to maintain its prestigious address, I owned half the commercial real estate in downtown through Victoria Holdings. That his $20 million settlement was pocket change compared to my latest property acquisitions. "The shop does well enough," I said quietly, taking my usual seat at the far end of the table. The same seat I'd occupied since opening Harrison Antiques, when my family had decided I needed to be reminded of my place. "Well enough." James laughed, swirling his expensive wine. "Come on, Vic. It's time to grow up. Join the real business world. In fact, my firm's looking for a new office manager. Perfect for someone with your limited experience." I thought about the papers sitting in my safe at the shop. About how tomorrow morning, James would learn exactly what limited experience had bought me. "Speaking of your firm," my father interjected, "I heard rents going up in that building. Something about new ownership." James waved his hand dismissively. "Nothing to worry about. Probably some investment group looking to make a quick profit. I'll have my team negotiate them down." I suppressed a smile, thinking of Kate preparing to deliver the eviction notice. James's team had already tried negotiating with my representatives. They'd gotten nowhere. "Victoria," my mother said, clearly trying to change the subject, "surely you're not planning to run that little shop forever? Your brother could help you find something more appropriate for a Harrison." The irony of her words almost made me laugh. The Harrison name meant something very different from what they thought. While they'd been trading on its prestige, I'd been building its actual worth. "The shop suits me," I replied, watching James roll his eyes. "Still selling those worthless trinkets?" he smirked. "I passed by yesterday. Saw some paperweight in the window. Probably cost what, $50? I bill more than that per minute." The paperweight he'd seen was a rare piece worth over $50,000. I'd acquired it specifically because I knew the buyer, a real estate developer who'd helped me purchase the very building James's firm occupied. "How much did that Ferrari cost, James?" I asked innocently. He puffed up immediately. $300,000. Special order. "Not that you'd understand that kind of investment." Investment. The word hung in the air as I thought about how I'd spent the past 15 years investing in properties while he invested in appearances. "Actually," Margaret chimed in, "we're thinking of getting a second one. James's bonus this year was quite substantial." I knew better. The firm's finances were precarious. Another reason I'd decided to act now. The new lease terms would force them to either downsize dramatically or find new offices. Either way, James's carefully constructed image of success would crumble. "Remember when Victoria wanted to be a lawyer?" My father laughed. "Thank goodness she didn't waste money on law school. The shop's bad enough, but at least it's quaint." James raised his glass. "To success. Real success, not just playing store." My phone buzzed. A message from Kate. "Everything's ready for tomorrow. Legal team confirms all documents are in order." "A toast," I agreed, raising my water glass. "To revelations." James frowned slightly. "Revelations?" "Just thinking about how tomorrow might bring some interesting surprises." "The only surprise would be if your shop actually turned a profit," he laughed. "Speaking of which, how's business really going? Eat alone?" I could spare some change from my last bonus. I thought about my latest bank statement, about the properties I owned, about how tomorrow would change everything. "That's very generous," I said softly, "but I manage." The rest of dinner passed in its usual way. James dominated the conversation with tales of his legal victories, each story carefully crafted to highlight his success while subtly undermining my choices. As dessert was served, he turned to me again. "You know, Vic, my firm's looking to expand. Might need that little storefront of yours. Prime location and all. I could make you a generous offer." I nearly choked on my coffee. James had no idea that I own not just my shop's building but most of the block. "I'll think about it," I replied, knowing that in less than 12 hours he'd have much bigger concerns than my storefront. My mother touched my arm as I prepared to leave. Victoria, dear, perhaps it's time to consider James's offer. You're not getting any younger, and that shop, well, it's hardly a legacy. If they only knew the legacy I'd built while they were all focused on appearances. As I walked to my car, James called out one final time. Hey Vic. When you're ready to join the real world, let me know. I'm sure we can find something suitable for someone of your capabilities. I turned back, looking at him standing there in his expensive suit, next to his showy Ferrari, the perfect picture of success, at least on the surface. Thank you, James, I said quietly. But I think tomorrow might change your perspective on my capabilities. He laughed, dismissing my words as he had dismissed me for the past 15 years. In my car, I checked my phone one last time. A message from my property management company confirmed everything was in place. At 9 a.m. tomorrow, James would learn that his little sister with the trinket shop was now his landlord. And not just any landlord, one who had every intention of showing him exactly what real success looked like. The next morning, I arrived at my shop early, deliberately positioning myself to watch the drama unfold across the street. James always held Friday morning meetings at 8:30 a.m., a tradition he'd started to show clients how dedicated his firm was, working the day after Thanksgiving. Kate met me with coffee and a tablet showing the security feed from his building's lobby. The courier is in position, she reported. Eviction notice will be delivered during their morning meeting. I nodded, watching James's Ferrari pull into his reserved parking spot. He stepped out in another expensive suit, projecting the same confidence he'd displayed at dinner. If only he knew that in exactly 23 minutes, his carefully constructed world would shatter. My phone buzzed, a group text from my mother. James is giving a breakfast presentation about the firm's latest victory. Victoria, you should really come see how real business is done. I smiled, thinking about the real business that was about to take place. I wouldn't miss this for the world, I replied, watching through my shop window as James strode into his building. At exactly 9 a.m. I saw the courier enter. Through the security feed, I watched him approach the reception desk during James's presentation. The conference room's glass walls gave me a perfect view of what happened next. The courier interrupted the meeting, handing the envelope directly to James, as instructed. I watched his face change as he read the notice, his professional mask cracking for the first time in years. Then my phone exploded with notifications. James, what the hell is this? Victoria Holdings? Is this some kind of joke? Mother, James says there's an issue with his building. Do you know anything about this? Father, your brother needs to speak with you immediately. I waited, letting the reality sink in. 3 minutes later, James burst out of his building, face red with rage, eviction notice crumpled in his fist. He spotted me through my shop window and stormed across the street. The bell above my door chimed as he entered, bringing with him the scent of expensive cologne and desperation. What is this? He demanded, waving the notice. Victoria Holdings. That's you? I carefully placed the crystal paperweight he'd mocked back in its display case. The same paperweight you laughed at yesterday? It's worth $50,000. I sold 3 last month to CEOs who now lease buildings from me. Funny how trinkets can build an empire, isn't it? This isn't possible, he stammered. You run a shop. You sell junk. No, James. I built a real estate empire while letting you think I just ran a shop. There's a difference. I turned to face him fully. Victoria Holdings owns 12 commercial properties downtown, including this one and yours. We're raising the rent to market rate, which, as you'll see, is triple what you're currently paying. His face went pale as he looked at the numbers. We can't afford this. The firm isn't. We don't have. I know, I said quietly. I've seen your books. All that money spent on image, the Ferrari, the designer suits, the prestigious address, but very little invested in actual growth. You built a facade of success while I built the real thing. The shop's door chimed again. Our parents rushed in, followed by Margaret. Victoria, my father started. What have you done? Done. I smiled, opening my safe and pulling out a folder. I've spent 15 years building something real while you all mocked my choices. Every time James laughed at my trinkets, I was closing another real estate deal. Every time you dismissed my little shop, I was acquiring another property. I handed them documents showing Victoria Holdings' portfolio, hundreds of millions in assets, all accumulated while they thought I was just getting by. All those times you could have asked about my business, tried to understand what I was building. Instead, you chose to believe what you wanted to see: the unsuccessful daughter, the disappointment, the shopkeeper. Margaret sank into a vintage chair worth more than her monthly salary. But you drive a Volvo. You wear simple clothes. Because I understand the difference between appearing successful and being successful. I turned to James. You have 30 days to either accept the new terms or find new offices. And before you try legal action, you might want to check who owns your backup locations. My mother's hand flew to her pearls. You can't do this to your brother. We're family. I touched Grandma's locket, remembering her lessons about quiet power and patient success. Family? Was James being family when he mocked my business? Were you being family when you dismissed my choices? When's the last time any of you actually asked about my life instead of just assuming? James slumped against a display case. Everything I built, my firm's reputation, was built on sand, I finished. While you were buying Ferraris, I was buying buildings. While you were impressing people with designer labels, I was impressing them with solid investments. That's the difference between us, James. You wanted to look successful. I wanted to be successful. My phone buzzed, another message from Kate. The press release about Victoria Holdings' latest acquisition is ready. Should I send it?